What's good, y'all? It is Thursday, January 15th. My name is Patrick, and you are listening to The Morning Show. All right. I got a shorter episode this morning because I'm only going to talk about one thing, which is tied to two specific issues happening right now, both in Indianapolis and the world, in this country. And I feel like, again, touches a lot of different areas. And also, just fully transparently, I have run out of time. So I only have enough time to talk about this one thing, but I think this one thing is pretty important. So, the context. In January of last year, ICE showed up at an IPS school to remove a student, and so that the way they could unite him with his father, who was voluntarily self-deporting because they had, quote unquote, a deportation order out on them. I showed up at said school and did not have a judicial warrant or court order, which are the two pieces of documentation that you need in order to lawfully remove a student or enter a building, a place of work, whatever the case might be, in order to execute or follow through on said orders, custody change, removal, whatever. Eventually, the student got united with the father, and nobody really knows if they were deported or not. So that's neither here nor there. But in November, Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita decided to file a lawsuit against IPS for having directly thwarted the attempted deportation of a quote-unquote Honduran national by keeping ICE from taking custody of that student. The lawsuit specifically says that the student, in defiance of his father's wishes, went to school anyways. And then when ICE went to collect him and put him with his father in order for them to self-deport, IPS did what they are legally allowed to do and said, "Nah, you ain't got the proper paperwork. We're not gonna do this." So that lawsuit essentially is meant to put pressure on IPS to kind of fall in line with federal immigration enforcement compliance. Like, so if ICE shows up, essentially the lawsuit is, I believe, trying to hamstring IPS in order to give ICE free reign into their schools. So on Tuesday of this week, January 13th, Chalkbeat, Indiana reporter Amelia Pack Harvey dropped an article talking about how IPS had rescinded two prior resolutions that explicitly stated IPS's support for undocumented students within their district. And instead, we're going to a new policy, or they've proposed a new policy that says IPS will continue to protect the confidentiality of student records information while providing equal access to public education for all students who live within the district, regardless of immigration status. This specific policy would essentially render the lawsuit by the state moot, null and void, because at the end of the day, it's not explicitly stating anything about undocumented students. It's talking about all students that fall within their purview, which are students who live in the district. By following through on this policy, essentially they are going to continue business as usual, because they already have laws and rules and guidelines in place to make sure that students' information, students' privacy, students' data is protected. At least that's supposed to be the case, I believe. But that's not really so that's not really though the issue at hand. So and like at the end of the day, it makes this lawsuit feel really. I mean, it really like exposes the lawsuit as the political stunt that it is. If you don't know about Todd Rokita, he is very much trying to make plays at Washington. I believe he's tried multiple times and failed. So I'm just saying, history ain't on this guy's side. Rarely, if ever. I don't think it ever has been. I have never been. And lawsuits like this, like directly targeting IPS in this way, is meant to, even if you lose in court, even if you fail to achieve the thing that you want to achieve, there's always when stuff like this happens, there is always a secondary motive, and the secondary motive is usually achieved. And the motive that's trying to be achieved is a narrative one. And so by launching this very public lawsuit against IPS, regardless of success and like getting IPS to do whatever it is that you want them to do when it comes to this, that secondary motive is to create fear in parents, in families, in students, in the hearts and minds of the people that work at IPS, so that way, because then they're going to be very hesitant about sending their kids to school, going to school. Schools might even start making the choice of saying, like, we just for the safety of everybody, you shouldn't come to this school, which is like we talked about with the E-Verify yesterday in one of the Senate bills that's going through, the immigration bills. Like, that is rife for legal discrimination. Doesn't have to say that, but that's what that is. And so lawsuits like this create a culture of fear that ultimately hurt student, family, teacher, faculty, staff, IPS district as a whole, public education as a whole, then our community, our economy as a whole. Like, this has ripple effects that go outward. I think that this new proposed resolution policy, whatever the case is good, because obviously all students should be, receive equal access and protection, especially when it comes to like their data, regardless of what their immigration status is, regardless of anything. Like, we should be protecting our kids. And I appreciate that, like, they can affirm this. What I don't appreciate is that they have to make the decision to rescind explicitly stated resolutions, that they have to rescind resolutions explicitly stating their support for undocumented students because of the public pressure from state and federal government. And that public pressure is, we will hurt you and everybody else in order to get to the handful of people that may or may not be undocumented. But it's not even about the undocumented people. It's about anybody who looks like they are not white and quote unquote from this country. That's a question we got to ask ourselves too. What does that even mean to be from this country? I'm sure the indigenous people that were here would have something to say about that. Apart from, the immigration of it all, the lawsuit essentially would create a Fourth Amendment situation. And the Fourth Amendment is the prohibition of unreasonable search and seizure. It's pretty damn unreasonable to show up at a school and try to take a student out of the school for no reason, without the proper documentation, the legal documentation. Doesn't make any sense. last thing I'm going to say on this, and I got to wrap it up because I got to go. After ICE murdered Renee Nicole Good, the very next thing that they did, they went down the street and they went to a high school at dismissal and started grabbing kids, grabbing teachers, grabbing people indiscriminately. They weren't there for a specific person. They were there to create terror and fear. And so lawsuits like this lead to actions like that. Those two things in conjunction lead to a narrative of fear that keeps people from exercising and participating in the economy and society, in just being a human being who can live in the world. That's the world that we're creating right now. People like Todd Rokita, people like the president, people like the vice president, people like everybody in this current federal administration. That is what they are creating right now. They are creating a world of fear. Not freedom, fear. All right, I got to jump. Appreciate everybody who's been tuning in this week. Lots of emotionally charged things for Patrick. So I apologize if that's not your cup of tea or in your bag, but here we are. We're going to keep talking about this stuff because it means a lot to me. It means a lot to the city, to the state, to everybody everywhere, because this bullshit's got to stop. And one of the ways that we can stop it is by talking about it and making sure people are informed and know what's going on. So shout out to y'all. Shout out to everybody who's tapped into episode 11. Again, great episode. Go check that out if you're looking to learn more about me, especially when it comes to the adoptee experience. And yeah, I have been Patrick Armstrong, and until tomorrow.